In the meantime, Israel's war in Gaza against Hamas and Russia's 2.5-year war versus Ukraine has hung the 24 hours news cycle day in, day out since those wars broke out. Another war in East Africa is seeing just as much destruction as people displacement, which the UN refugee chief is pleading to the world to help end. VOA's UN correspondent Margaret Bashir spoke to him, and she filed this story.
Sudan's war has triggered one of the largest displacement crises on the planet, according to the United Nations. It broke out in April 2023 between two rival generals and has pushed internal displacement to nearly 10 million people and driven 2 million more to seek safety in neighboring countries. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, met some of the displaced this week in Kosti, in the southern part of Sudan.
They're fleeing horrible violence, very severe violations of human rights, but increasingly they're also fleeing deprivation, and in particular food insecurity and in some cases hunger. So you have a multiplication of factors that are all generated clearly by this insane war that doesn't seem to end.
In South Sudan, the UN Refugee Agency is working to assist them. But humanitarian aid is only a short-term solution. Peace is what is needed, he said.
My appeal is really to everybody who has any influence on the parties in this conflict. Push them not towards the battlefield, but to the negotiating table.
Elsewhere in Africa, the effects of the climate crisis are driving displacement, forcing people to move, especially when coupled with conflicts.
And there, what happens is that climate becomes a cause of conflict. It deprives very poor communities living together of basic resources, water, for example. The communities start fighting, and this generates displacement.
Globally, the numbers of displaced people, refugees, and asylum seekers have been increasing over the last 12 years to a staggering 120 million. Ukraine, Syria, and Afghanistan account for just over half of all forcibly displaced persons.
This tragic progression will just continue if at least some of these conflicts are not resolved and the conditions for people to return, which is still the best solution, are not created. This is the big challenge.
Grandi warns that it will be difficult for an increasingly divided world to meet growing global challenges. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.